Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to Earthbound Misfits. I'm your host, Sam. And this, you remember her from my last video, is Dorothy. Dorothy is named after Dorothy Hodgkins. I think that's the way you pronounce the last name, who is a female scientist that discovered crystallography. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's pronounced crystallography, and it pretty much helps us understand the atomic structure of everything. So, yeah, pretty important. But basically, she allowed for the more in-depth study of medicines like insulin. And I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so I thought it was pretty appropriate. Dorothy, Yellow Brick Road, I mean, just makes sense. So this episode is not about Dorothy. This episode is going to be about shedding. So let's get to it. Okay, everybody. So I've seen a lot of talk about shedding and how to do assisted shedding. We're not going to talk about shedding so much in this video. It's going to be more about assisted shedding. I'm not an expert. I just know what works for me and for my snakes. I see people have problems with humidity, which is pretty common with new ball python owners. When you're having trouble with humidity, don't worry. Happens all the time. Happens to everybody. You'll get there. That has a lot to do with your substrate and how you keep in their enclosure, how you have it maintained, whether you have it wrapped, whether you have PVC, we'll do a whole episode on that too. I want to address people who are having trouble, they have snakes who are having trouble shedding. And Dorothy would be a good, when I got her, when I unboxed her, if you watch the unboxing episode, she had shed hanging off of her neck. And that's probably because she was just going in the shed when she was shipped to me. Going through stress, your snake can kind of stop itself from shedding, especially if it's in blue. It'll just stop. And that's not necessarily healthy for the snake, but it happens. Um, so if that's happening with your snake, you want to try to get as comfortable as you can. Again, check out the husbandry. Maybe something's not right in your husbandry that is causing your snake to be stressed out that it just stop its shedding. But anyways, back to the point. People make posts on social media all the time. There's always somebody um, who answers the question, right? And then there's 500 other people that answer the question the same way. I don't know why we do this. But some of those answers are wrong. And because of the numerous responses to it, it may seem like good, correct information. And the main thing I see when people are talking about assisted um, sheds with their snakes is they give them baths. Now, I'd never do that. I never put my snakes in a tub of water. Never. My snakes never climb into their water. Ball pythons do not enjoy being in water. Maybe there's a small percentage because they have their own personalities, they have their own characters. That's fine. Maybe there are some, but for the majority of ball pythons, they don't necessarily like baths. They don't like it when you put them underwater. They don't like it when you run a warm sink. They don't like it. What makes some people think that ball pythons like to climb is when in Africa, where they're from, when the ground gets too wet because it's during the rainy season, they'll climb onto trees to get off of that wet substrate, right? Because it's unhealthy for them. So they don't enjoy being wet. So let's dispel that myth. Okay. Stop giving your snakes baths. If your snake crawls into its water bowl, it's probably not likely that it enjoys getting in its water bowl. Is probably an issue with your husbandry. Again, I'm not judging, but I would check and go through the checklist of proper husbandry and make sure you're following those things. Because if your snake is climbing in the water, it's probably have a humidity problem, a heat problem. Something's going on that's causing that snake to act weird. That's weird. What I did was after I got Dorothy here, I actually filmed me giving an assisted shed. Now, um, one of the other ways that people are doing assisted sheds is, and it's very, very popular, and I think it's better than most of adding misting systems, spraying your snake down, putting them in water. These things can cause, especially with misting systems, if they're not cleaned correctly, can cause health issues with your snake, right? Give them respiratory infections. There's a lot of information out there that can be misleading. So if you're doing it wrong, don't blame yourself. Just see what you're doing wrong and try your best to correct it. That's all you can do. Uh, But I see people using pillowcases, which I think is probably the closest to what I do. Um, I chose not to use pillowcases because in design, pillowcases are meant to be soft, nice, smooth texture. So what I do is I'll take a terry cloth or a bath towel because it has a rougher texture, and I soak that like you would in a pillowcase situation in warm water. I don't wring all the water out, but I don't leave it so wet that it's dripping, right? I want that moisture to be in there. So then what I do is I put the snake inside the towel while the towel's still warm, not too hot. Use the temperature gun if you need to. If you feel uncomfortable, use the temperature gun. You don't want to burn your snake and you don't want to freeze your snake. So make sure it's warm, but not too warm. And then what I do is open the towel up and I simply place the snake right in the center of the towel. And I take all sides and I fold them in on each other. And I kind of wrap the snake in its own little hide. And it's going to try to climb out of the towel. And in doing so, with the rough edges, with the rough fabric of the towel, it helps pull on that shed and break that shed off and start to pull off. It gives them something to rub against that's a little rougher than a pillowcase. And the moisture and the humidity from having the towel warm and wet, obviously, is going to loosen that shed up and make it a lot easier for them. It's actually giving them something to rub against and pull that shed off. Doesn't bother them too much. And sometimes you have to, work with the snake. So sometimes after I've, had the snake in the towel for 5, 10 minutes at a time, I let them come out and I see how well their shed is broke up, how well they've been rehumidified, right? How loose is that shed? Does it feel dry anymore? Um, and then I put them back in for a minute, see if they could just get it themselves. But if they don't, then as you can see in the video that I put on here, you can see where I'm helping the shed pull off. And I'm trying to go basically in a direction that the snake would have it going. I try not to go against their scale. But I do find it easy if you're pulling, if you're doing, if you're, let me see if I can kind of show you here on Dorothy. If you're pulling back here, but down towards their belly too. So you kind of want to have that down motion because you want all that to come off at once. And it kind of separates right there at their belly. They are able to get these belly scales off. That's been my experience um, because they're crawling around their cage anyway. So by the time you get to the point where you think you need to do an assisted shed with your snake, it's probably just from the head back on the top across the dorsal down the sides. But likely this is probably gone. And Dorothy was such a good sport through this whole thing. I mean, even in this video, you can see she's a young snake, you know, and I mean, I could just grab her head, not grab her head, but, just put my hand right under her. She doesn't mind long tongue flicks. So she was a great sport for this and a great, I thought she'd be a great feature for that. Turned out really good. I have bioactive enclosures, so my humidity stays pretty well in the range it's supposed to be in all the time. Properly mix water in your substrate when you're building your enclosure. Don't use things like aspen. People will bite your head off if you use aspen. Don't use aspen. It's really dry. It doesn't hold moisture well, and it can mold. So you want to stay away from that. But in my enclosures, I use, I use a soil cypress mulch, rectibark, peat moss mix. I kind of make my own, and it works well for me. And for like a 40-gallon enclosure, I'd say I add probably a third gallon of distilled water into the substrate directly before I even put it in the enclosure. It's like a third to a half, depends on how the substrate feels. Because I want it to, I want it to be moist, but I don't want it to be wet. You know what I mean? With the things like cypress mulch, peat moss in there, these are natural moisture holders, so they hold water, and that makes your humidity last a little longer. So, well, I'll talk more about that when I show how I'm going to build her bioactive enclosure. So, make sure you tune into that. I hope this video was a little helpful. There's a lot of information out there, but my snakes seem pretty happy, and I've never had a health issue, not scale rot, mites, RIs, nothing like that. Because I'm very, very careful about how I care for my pythons. Um, because I would be devastated if I did something wrong, and we've all done it. We've all done something wrong, and probably caused our snake stress, and that's okay because you're learning The same way we teach them and socialize them, you're learning how to care for a snake. So it's okay to make mistakes. Just make sure you try to correct them. There's some great videos out there. Dave Kaufman has a video, Ball Pythons in the Wild. I'd strongly suggest you go and check that out because it'll answer a lot of your questions and dispel a lot of myths about ball pythons and African soft fur rats. Oh gosh, don't get me started on that myth. And then if you want your snake to act like this little girl, where you can just kind of she's completely relaxed and comfortable. If you want to teach your snake to do that, you go over to Greenman Pythons and subscribe to Bob Bledsoe. Okay. Whenever I meet a new ball python owner and they have questions about why their snake's acting this way or that way, what they need, what they should be doing, rather than give them the long answer in a form that probably has 1,000 right answers and 1,000 wrong answers, I just say, hey, go check out these channels here. You're going to learn so much more. And after you do that, you're going to find a rabbit hole and it's tons of good information. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed Dorothy. She did a great job, and I think she deserves a round of applause because she's so cool. I think she would clap for herself if she had arms. Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? No, you're too humble. You're just too sweet. Yeah. So, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, you learned something here. Hit that subscribe button. Check us out on your social media platforms. And until next time, stay wild. Keep your feet on the ground.
This is a Hayes production. 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 This is a Hayes production.